He gently disengaged his hand from his brother's and looked at his chronometer. 6:08, it read, but he could tell by the way the numbers flashed and then slowly faded that it had stopped. Why wasn't it working? He showed it to Shane, who just nodded. Nothing to worry about, brother, Shane said. It doesn't really matter. Shane was right. Of course, it didn't really matter, but he still wanted to know what time it was. What time is it? He asked Dontic. Leave me alone, said Dontic. We're getting close. I have to watch this. Hennessy waited a moment and then asked again. Distractedly, Dontic looked at his wrist, then held his chronometer to his ear. It stopped, he said. Mine too, said Hennessy. Dontic turned and looked at him. He didn't seem to notice Shane even there right next to Hennessy. People see what they want to see, thought Hennessy. Doesn't that seem weird to you? Dontic asked. Hennessy shrugged. Nothing to worry about, he said. It doesn't really matter. Dontic narrowed his eyes. And another thing, he said. Why are you so fucking searing all of a sudden? Hennessy cast his eyes toward Shane, then realized what he'd done and flicked them back quickly. Dontic's eyes moved to the side, stared through Shane, then moved back. It's just like that, said Hennessy. I just feel better. I don't know why. Rolling his eyes, Dontic turned away. Just between you and me, Jim. Shall he really be doing this? Asked Shane. I don't know, said Hennessy. Should he? Some things it's better not to mess with. Hennessy nodded. Shane was probably right about it if he told Dontic that he wouldn't listen. What could he do about it? Maybe it was a bad idea, but even if it was, he didn't know how he could get Dontic to. After a few more minutes, or maybe it was longer, impossibly to say, Dontic slowed the drill. He drilled forward slowly until they struck something, and the drill made a whining sound. He reversed it, backed up a little, and then approached at a slightly different angle, shearing away the side of the tunnel wall. Hennessy just stayed smiling, glancing occasionally over at his brother, waiting. Are you sure it's a good idea? Asked Shane again. Hennessy shrugged. Dontic backed up again, came in once more, then a fourth time. I think it's a mistake, Shane said. There was Hennessy, could see a strange shape, still half enclosed in rock on one side. It was hard to see past the particles of rock and silt swirling through the water. Dontic back a little, then turned off the drill. What's out there? Asked Hennessy. How the hell should I know? Said Dontic. I've never seen anything like it before. It's the black marker, said Shane. The black marker, Hennessy thought. As the water settled, he began to see it more clearly. It looked like a monolith made of some sort of obsidian. It narrowed to a point at the top, the whole of it twisting slightly as it rose. It was horizontally straighted and covered with thousands of symbols unlike anything he had seen before. Were they glowing, or did it only look like they were because of the way the light was catching them? He couldn't tell for sure. What he could see of it, of the part that was uncovered, now was probably 3 meters tall. "Oh my God," said Dantic, his voice filled with an uncustomary awe. "Who put this here, or what?" "That's the last question you want to ask," said Shane to Hennessy. "Better to know, better not to know." He remembered suddenly the schematic that Tanner had shown them of the marker. He pulled it up on his hollow screen. There were 2 horns at the top pointing out in either direction, and he could see the marker went on much deeper below them, probably another 20 meters or more. How big is it?" Hennessy asked. Dante, confused, said something, but Hennessy wasn't asking him. "Big," said Shane. He moved Hennessy's hand to the porthole, pressed it against the glass. Together they stared out. "You don't want to mess with this," Shane said. "You're in danger." "I'm going to move us closer," said Dante. "Are you sure?" asked Hennessy, still staring out. "Maybe we shouldn't mess with it. Besides, him just at the edge of his peripheral vision, Shane nodded. Calling Tanner," said Dante. "See what he wants to do." Hennessy tried, got only bursts of static, little bits of Tanner's voice spliced into it like it had been torn apart. "I don't know," said Hennessy. "There's something seriously wrong here. Let's leave it alone." "We came all this way," said Dante. "We've been in this coffin for hours. Now that we're here, we have to get a better look." Hennessy remained for a moment staring at it and finally nodded. "It wouldn't hurt to get closer, I guess," he said, "as long as we're careful." He looked over at his brother, who was shaking his head. "It just might," he said. Dante eased the ship forward, then cut the engines, let them drift. There they were, right up against it, the F-7 bumping softly against the marker's side. "It's marvelous," Dante whispered. "It's not marvelous," said Shane. This face stretched into a strange rectus. "It's horrible. Dante is becoming one of them, brother. I'm afraid we're going to have to get rid of him."